Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is the second part of What If Luffy Was the Strongest Man in the World. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Zoro consumed all the food and drink placed in front of him, which is to be expected from someone who has gone 9 whole days without eating or drinking anything. But Luffy and Bonnie ate even more than he did. At that rate they would quickly run out of supplies. This is so good. She speaks with several pieces of meat in her hand and taking a big swig straight from a bottle of sake. You bet it is. A party right after our first battle with the Navy. Shish ishi. He bounced from side to side as he stuffed meat and sake into his mouth. Both had a reddish tinge to their cheeks. On the other hand, Zoro, who didn't eat as much as they did, but drank at least 3 times as much, was still very sober. But hey Luffy, say it. What's the deal with your fruit? She spoke at the same time as she turned another bottle. Ah, it's the yummy no me, a Logia. Bonnie spits out all the sake she was putting into her mouth. The swordsman can't avoid the thought that this was such a waste of a good drink. Fuck, a Logia. You are probably unbeatable in the whole East Blue. The green-haired raises an eyebrow hearing this. Why? Is this Logia thing really so strong? Bonnie looks at him like he was a madman. Strong? It's said to be the strongest type of devil fruit. Even the most normal Logia would be superior to many devil fruits out there. They are second only to rare and almost mystical fruits. And that's Logias are the very incarnation of the forces of nature. The swordsman whistles at this. Shish ishi. True, but mine is a little different from a normal Logia. This catches both of their attention. What do you mean? The Pinkette asks, curious since the Straw Hat was the first Logia user she ever saw. A normal Logia can make a person intangible, right? Bonnie nods her head in agreement and Zoro opens his mouth in surprise at how broken this seems. It turns out that one of the main properties of my yummy no mi, the fruit of darkness, is absorption. To do an example, he gets his right hand up and it's covered in darkness. The wind, the sea, everything seems to be heading towards that point. A bone flies off and is absorbed. This one is practically a black hole. I am able to absorb anything, and that includes damage. Unlike other Logia's users, I am not intangible. Bonnie makes an disappointed look, however Luffy never stops smiling. Shish ishi. But you won't find another Logia user capable of doing this. Release. The bone that had been absorbed came out of the black hole in Luffy's hand, very different from what it was before. He falls to the floor of the boat. Zoro and Bonnie take a look at it and are surprised. It's like it was torn apart from the inside out or something. Now they were impressed. Does it work on humans? Bonnie asks, already imagining the amount of damage it would do in someone. She even asked herself if this kind of thing happened to her, would she survive? Absolutely. Luffy answers with a big grin in his face. It must kill right away. The swordsman said, amused by the sheer destructive Luffy demonstrated. Some people die instantly, others are left with only serious injuries. The swordsman and the Pinkette shiver at the thought of how destructive these serious injuries could be. Maybe just calling them bad was an understatement. Now I have no doubts. That power definitely makes you one of the strongest people in East Blue. If he hadn't seen Luffy fighting, the green-haired would have disagreed, but knowing of his physical abilities and now having a sense of his powers, he is unable to disagree with Bonnie. Who knows? Maybe there's still a little thing or two that I can do. Shish ishi. The woman's eyes sparkle with anticipation. Like? She asked, putting her face very close to Luffy's. When he notices the small distance between them, the two turn even redder and Bonnie pulls away a little. Well, you'll find out in time. With that answer she puffs out her cheeks and starts moving the dark-haired boy from side to side. Oh come on Luffy, don't be so boring. Hey Bonnie, I bet if we give him enough drink he'll open his mouth. The two exchange a devilish smile. Luffy laughs even harder at their reaction and accepts every drink they give him. But halfway through, the three of them forgot why they were doing this and just started eating and drinking like a party. Bonnie and Luffy were dancing back and forth eating meat and Zoro was drinking barrel after barrel. The Pink-et and the Straw Hat sometimes argued to know who was the captain or who would be the king of the pirates, but it was more than certain that from now on they were a crew. They were just both drunk, talking about small details. At some point they just fell asleep. Pussy had already gone to sleep a long time after eating some meat. He had been with Luffy for so long that all that noise didn't bother him. They wouldn't realize they'd run out of supplies until the next day. The sun's rays were already hitting his eyes, which were still closed, but the boy in the straw hat only adjusted his hat and tried to continue sleeping. He had a horrible headache. It had been a long time since he drank that much. He turned to the other side trying to go back to sleep again. Arg. The Pink-et one was having the same reaction as her crewmate. A monstrous hangover. Luffy felt someone's breath hitting his face. Very lazily he slowly opened his eyes and saw Bonnie also lying on her side, with her face in front of him. Feeling watched, she opens her eyes and finds Luffy's face still sleepy. The two take a while to process how close they are to each other. When they realize their faces turn red. What the fuck are you doing? She tries to get up quickly, but the headache throws off her balance and causes her to fall again. I was trying to sleep. Very slowly he sits up and leans against the wall. Why didn't you go to the cabin? There was only one cabin on the whole fishing boat. Last night Luffy assumed that Bonnie would sleep there and he and Zoro outside. I don't know. I don't remember anything after you showed your powers. I remember, meat, sake. He whispers to himself, not actually remembering something. The cabin door opens and Zoro exits. Unlike the two, he looks great despite having drunk infinitely more. How are you both so bad with so little? He raises his right eyebrow in doubt. Shut up, shut up. Where's the coffee? She answers and start looking around, as if she would find some coffee just there. The swordsman snorts. We don't have anything else, all the supplies are gone. The dark-haired and the Pink-et grunt a little and then they decide to lie down on the floor. So, we're going to need to go to another island. I don't know how to sail, do you? Zoro shakes his head and Bonnie makes an X with her hands, still grunting. So we're going to have to rely on the good old luck of the sea. Shish ishi. His other two crewmates sigh, but no, they can't complain. The hours of the day go by. Luffy and Bonnie's hangovers pass, which makes them realize how hungry they are. Food. Both say in absolute synchrony. You guys said that at least 20 times. Shut the fuck up. The swordsman screams, already losing his mind. The perspective of spending even more time with them in this tiny boat was throwing him off. The three took the fishing gear that was on the boat and tried to catch something with no luck. We probably need a navigator, it would be much easier to get somewhere that way. The pink-haired says, after sighing. And a cook to have the most delicious things. She says, already imagining a delicious slice of pizza. And a musician. In his mind, Luffy was already imagining everyone singing. This is not important, you idiot. Bonnie slaps the swordsman on the back of the head. How not? Luffy is right, a musician is essential. Shish ishi, for sure. Zoro sighs and decides to not go further on this subject. But then, what are we going to do? He asks, turning to both of them. Well, we need to go to the Grand Line, and I have no idea where it is. Luffy answers, still looking for a fish. So, the first step is to find a navigator and know where and how we get into the Grand Line. Bonnie completes, almost catching a fish, but losing it in the last second. She makes a pissed face and Luffy laughs. It looks like a plan, A smile plants on his face, and just in time. Land in sight. When approaching the island they saw that the port had a few boats and all with the same flag. It was an ordinary pirate skull but with a red nose and 2 vertical eye marks. Is this town already taken? Bonnie asks, raising an eyebrow. Maybe. Zoro answers with his hand in the Wado Ikimonji, his sword with a white base. Luffy was jumping with excitement, mainly because he was going eat at least. Hey! Help! Help! Help us! Help! The 3 turn to the direction of the requests for help. Usi also looks up curiously. There were 3 men fallen in the sea, beating their arms, trying their best to not sink. They swim towards the fishing boat that just appeared. Please let us up. One of them begs. Zoro, Luffy and Bonnie face each other, shrug and decide to save them. Thank you very much, now. The one in the middle who appeared to be the leader of these 3 gets up. He looks at Bonnie and licks his lips and looks at the other 2 with a cruel smile. His 2 companions stand up with the same expression. We are Captain Buggy's pirates, Sir Dash. Luffy kicked him in the middle of his face sending him back to the sea, this time even farther away. Zoro doesn't even take off the scabbard of his sword and just uses it to hit the left hand's stomach sending him as far as Luffy did with the other. Bonnie, very angry at the way they looked at her, slapped the one on the right turning him into a child and throwing him in the same direction the others had sent them. So whoever took this island is called Buggy. Sounds stupid, the green-haired says yawning. We'll find out soon enough, Shishishi. Where's the woman? And that guy? Did you find them? There. She's on the roof. Shoots start to be fired against Nami. Today was not her lucky day. She had even thought it was at first, when she managed to steal a boat with treasures from 3 clowns, but then it went from bad to worse. She knew about Buggy's fame and knew that he must have a lot of treasures, but to her surprise not only did he have a lot of treasures but also a map of the entrance to the Grand Line, which in itself is worth an absurd amount of money. Thinking she hit the jackpot she managed to steal the map, but when she went to get the gold a weird guy appeared. He didn't look like he was on the Buggy crew and told her to hand over the map, which wasn't something she was willing to do. The only problem was his strange power, that he used to almost stole from her. Luckily or unfortunately, depending on the perspective, Buggy's subordinates found them and it distracted him just enough for her to escape. But it didn't take long before they missed the map and put 2 and 2 together. Now all kinds of freaks were after her ready to kill her because of this map. A bullet grazes her shoulder, doesn't quite hit the skin but rips her shirt. Shit. She jumps from roof to roof, dodging bullets as best she can. The thief already had some experience with this, but she was also getting tired. Then a bullet grazes her leg, doesn't pierce but rips through her shin. Arg. The red-haired thief loses her balance, trips, and rolls until she falls off the roof straight to the ground. Luckily she doesn't get too much hurt, just cuts and bruises. She'd already suffered worse. The real problem was that she was cornered, leaning against the wall. She didn't have any weapons while the Buggy pirates were all around her ready to turn her into a sieve if necessary. Where's your partner? He speaks with the gun pointed directly at her head. He's not my partner. A warning shot is fired in the side of her face. Smoke comes out of the hole in the wall, Nami's ear buzzes and she is a little stunned. Don't try to cover for him. Tell us where he is. She opens her mouth to try to answer something but can't think of anything. The pirate closes his eyes, he adjusts the angle of the gun so that it hits her in the middle of the forehead and squeezes the trigger. Room. Shambles. Everyone feels like a thin layer has passed through them and in the next instant where the thief was is now one of Buggy's subordinates taking the shot, that should have been for the redhead girl, in the middle of the waist. He fell stunned with pain, everyone was shocked by the sudden development. They look from side to side but see no one. Completely terrified, they run away leaving their companion to die. A few meters away from there, in the same house they were facing, two people watched the pirates leaving. The redhead had stripes where the bullet had grazed her. "Should I thank you?" She looks at the person that saved her, the same one that ruined her plans earlier. He was tall and skinny, had a few sideburns and a goatee, a few small bags under his eyes and some earrings. He wore a white fur hat with spikes on the back. His blouse had long sleeves and was black on the shoulders and arms, from the chest down it was yellow. He wore threadbare jeans with marks similar to the hat and had tattoos on his cuffs. He also had a katana on his back. "I just don't like to see people dying for nothing. Now give me the map." Nami takes a step back. "You say that, but still he put someone in my place to get shot," says with a ironic grin in her face. "Of course, he was an enemy," the man answers indifferent. "And I'm not?" she asks, raising her eyebrow. "From what I've seen, you just steal and don't really seem to pose any danger. Now give me the map," he speaks, extending his hand to her. And dash. She is interrupted by a very loud sound that seems to have come from the near harbor. The man turns his back and looks out the window, seeing debris and people fallen to the roofs of the houses that were nearby. What the fuck just happened? He looks back again and realizes that the thief has once again escaped unnoticed. Tisk. Going back a few moments earlier. Luffy, Bonnie, Zoro and Uzi finished boarding the island. The pink-ed caressed the animal's head, which was very happy with it, and for her part Bonnie was enjoying the animal more and more. It didn't even look like several pirates in weird clown outfits had surrounded the group. They had weapons pointed and swords raised. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Luffy puts his hands up with his fists clenched and a smile on his face. "I am Monkey D. Luffy, the future king of pirates. Do you know where there is a Grand Line map?" Luffy's crewmates don't change their expressions as they aren't surprised by the statement. On the other hand, Buggy's henchman almost jumped in surprise. "Pirate King? Map? So you are here for the map." It was all the confirmation they needed. "It doesn't look like they're going to want to give it to us," Zoro says in a noncommittal way. "Nothing out of our expectations," Bonnie says, rubbing her stomach. She really wanted a slice of pizza now. Grr. The three pirates that just arrived had smiles on their faces, making Buggy's henchmen fear for their lives. They don't even have time to decide the next step. Luffy jumps up and stands side by side with them, getting between two pirates who look like clowns. The boy's shadow seems to take shape and stretches until it's under them all, none of the clowns or pirates, it wasn't quite clear which one they were, escapes. One moment they pointed their guns at Luffy, the next they were sucked into the black hole. Release. Everyone who was conscious and healthy less than a second ago is thrown out of that mass of darkness, either already dead with blood oozing from their orifices and their internal organs completely destroyed, or the few who survived with sequelae that would likely never be cured. Luffy retracts the column and looks at his friends, laughing. "See? Really strong, right? I almost feel sorry for them," Zoro says with widened eyes. Then he stops to think for a bit and shrugs. "Nah, I'm not. A Logia really is on another level," Bonnie answers, still surprised by how easily the Straw Hat dealt with them. GGRRRR. Uzi seemed to agree with Bonnie. The swordsman and the pink-ed were amazed at Luffy's abilities. "Well, you guys heard them. There's a map around here, let's go get it." He walks away excited. "But, Luffy, can you even read a map?" The boy stops and looks back with his goofy grin. "No, and I bet neither of you do either, right?" A large bead of sweat appears on their foreheads as they nod in confirmation. "Shishishi, we really need a navigator." The four walk down the street, realizing that there are no longer any residents in the city. The lack of signs of struggle led them to believe that they choose to fled rather than fighting and being killed by the pirates. "I think if we want to get anywhere we need to find this Buggy guy." When she finished saying that, Her stomach gave a giant growl followed by Luffy's stomach growl. How hungry. Let's get this guy over with and get his food. Zoro was almost startled by how synchronized those two were. The four walked around as if this were a normal city. On a nearby corner, Nami watched this group with wide eyes. She hadn't seen what happened, but she saw the effects of what was done. Probably what scared her most was the lack of signs of struggle in them. Maybe these people could help her. Hey there. The four look at the girl who was calling them and see a red-haired girl with short hair wearing a short skirt and white shirt. You guys look strong, right? And must be here to get Buggy's things, right? I can help you with that, she says, pointing to herself with her thumb and a confident expression. I don't even know who you are, and anyway we don't need help. The other two nod in agreement and the tiger looks pretty disinterested. But. A big noise echoes through the street. The redhead goes frig, then thinking that something had happened, until she realizes that it was the stomachs of the boy with the straw hat and the girl with pink hair. At least I can get you some food. We accept. They say at the same time with no hesitation. Zoro sighs and wonders if she would have some sake too. Usi remains completely uninterested. This is so good. Once more they speak in perfect synchrony. They're really freaking me out about it. The green-haired speaks, taking a bottle of alcohol that he had in a cupboard in the house. The tiger ate a piece of meat that Nami had thrown at him. Luffy and Bonnie practically devoured their food in an animalistic way, without pause, gulping one after the other as quickly as possible and eating absurd amounts of food. Luffy at least left the plate on the table. Makino taught him good manners, at least some good manners. Bonnie instead was leaning back in her chair, plate in hand and feet on the table. Nami looked at that group, questioning her decision. So, this is your house? He asks between chews. No, it's probably from someone who ran away when Buggy arrived. Ah, so we're invading and stealing. Zoro says in an ironic way. Hey, you stole that bottle and the rest is just food. The thief answers, trying to defend herself. The swordsman shrugs. Whatever. Nami turned over her eyes. This swordsman was annoying. So, are you guys here to steal the buggy too? Luffy nodded. Yeah, we heard he has a map for the Grand Line and we want to get it. Nami opens her mouth slightly in surprise. She reaches into her skirt pocket and pulls out a rolled up piece of paper. This map. Bonnie and Luffy stop eating right away. Zoro almost spits out his drink and even Usi looks up in surprise. Is this? He speaks, almost climbing the table. The redhead nods and the four of them almost fell to the floor. But wait. This means nothing for us, we can't read maps. All of Luffy's expectation and happiness turns into disappointment, making him lay his head down on the table. You guys don't know how to read maps. Zoro nods his head in confirmation. But it's so easy. The three lock up on hearing this. Wait, you know. A smug smile appears on Nami's face and she puffs out her chest. Of course, I'm the best navigator in the East Blue, probably even in the Four Seas. Everyone, including Usi, opens their mouths impressed. Are you a navigator? He asks, almost climbing the table again. So join our crew. He demands with a big smile. Crew? You mean? The boy nodded without losing his happy expression. Yes, a pirate crew. Hearing that word, an expression of contempt comes over her face. Tisk, never mind. All three of them raises an eyebrow with the sudden change. What's the problem? Become our crewmate. He repeats with a gigantic smile. Shut the fuck up. Luffy is surprised by the change in attitude. Zoro frowns annoyed and Bonnie gets up from his chair ready to fight. I hate pirates. They are just monsters. Her voice got a little weaker at the end. Everyone's expressions lighten up a little. They have no idea what happened, but it was clear that pirates were responsible for some atrocity that happened to her. The atmosphere in the room was now heavy, no one else knew what to say. If you hate pirates so much, why don't you take advantage of them? Nami recognized this voice. She looked back with a surprised expression, and there he was. The same person who made her be discovered and saved her later. Luffy, Bonnie, Zoro and Usopp got up. Zoro draws his swords, Luffy and Bonnie prepare to advance and Usopp is about to jump into the unknown man. Everyone had been scared that they hadn't noticed him before he spoke. How the fuck did this guy even get in without anyone seeing? This guy is working for that buggy. Zoro asks, just waiting for an opening to attack. Relax, I'm in the same position as you. I want Buggy's map and treasures. Treasures? Luffy looking to his friends, that also seem surprised. They still have their guard up, but are more willing to hear him. The tattooed one looks a little surprised by his reaction. Of course, Buggy is one of the biggest pirates in the East Blue and consequently one of the richest and with more people working for him. Your name is Nami, isn't it? Wouldn't the ideal situation for you be pirates killing each other while you steal the treasure? Nami's eyes widen, not out of fright, but because what the skinny guy was talking about made sense. Despite not being part of or having a crew, I am also a pirate. Why don't we make an alliance? He says looking at the four pirates. An alliance with someone we don't even know the name? Sounds like a great idea. Zoro retorts with an ironic smirk in his face. He also takes another swig from the bottle when he's finished speaking. Fair. My name is Trafalgar D. Waterlaw. The Pink-et raises an eyebrow hearing this. D? How funny, Luffy also has that in his name. Bonnie looks at the boy in the straw hat who doesn't seem to mind the resemblance. For the first time Law shows a reaction looking surprised at the straw hat pirate. I see. He looks thoughtful. Everyone except Luffy is curious, but soon Law shakes his head from side to side and decides to focus on what matters now. Anyway, what I propose to you is that we join forces to steal the buggy. And why would I help you? Nami asks skeptically. As I said, while we're busy fighting you can take the treasure, of course if we can get there sooner the gold is ours. Unless. The redhead raises an eyebrow in doubt. Unless what? We let you keep the treasure as long as you deliver the map. Wait a minute. And who's going to get this map in the end? Us or you? She asks, suspicious of the tattooed guy intentions, but before Law says anything Luffy gives his solution to the problem. That's simple. Tral, join my crew, Shishishi. You won't regret it because I'm going to be the future Pirate King anyway. Once again he is surprised, while Nami slaps herself in the face at this, and wonders if this idiot calls anyone he meets for his crew while talking a lot of shit. It's true that I don't have any crew. Very well, depending on how things turn out I'll join you. Luffy gives a big smile, moving in his chair. Shishishi, cool. But what do you know how to do? I'm a doctor, a surgeon to be more specific. Luffy and Bonnie say, surprised and happy at the same time. Their eyes are sparkling with stars. That's great, we were going to need a doctor sooner or later. She says, more willing to let him in the crew. But I haven't. He tries to say, just to get ignored. Shishishi, welcome to the crew, Tral. A lot of sweet forms in the head of the surgeon as he wonders if he won't regret his decision. The six were on their way to the pirates' base, that is where the town's main square was located. We should think of a plan. What are you able to do? Law asks his possible future companions. Nami kept away from them, as much as she didn't want to. She accepted the deal with the surgeon and handed the map to the pink-haired one. Now any treasure she could steal would be hers. Bonnie raises her index finger pointing between her and Luffy. He and I are devil fruit users. She speaks, avoiding giving more information, still not trusting either the tattooed or the redhead enough to tell them everything. Nami was in shock. Did those legendary fruits of immeasurable value really existed? And two people in front of her have that power? Interesting. Well, I'm one too. My power came from Ope no Mi. Basically I can manipulate things in a certain area up to a certain point. The thief became even more frightened, even began to reconsider whether she really should do something or not. Bonnie and Zoro realize that Law was trying to demonstrate their cooperation, and they also slowly becomes more willingly to do so. Luffy also noticed, but he already saw Law as part of the crew and was thinking about how to convince the redhead to enter. I use the Santorio style. Yes, I heard about, ex-pirate hunter. The green-haired gives a convinced smile. It looks like I have a good reputation. At this point Nami didn't even know how to express herself anymore. This was the famous pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro? And now he was part of a crew with two other devil fruit users. She wouldn't doubt it if someone said they were the strongest in the East Blue, even though they were still weaker than him. At least in her head. Anyway, be vigilant anyway. Rumors say that Buggy is also a devil fruit user. Law say, getting all of them surprised. Nami was really reconsidering her plans after hearing this. However, she just sighs and decides to still try. She can't go home empty-handed, especially now that she was so close. Luffy for the first time in the entire conversation shows some interest. Hey Tral. If Buggy really is a devil fruit user, leave him to me. He says with a big smile of anticipation. Why? He questions, raising an eyebrow. The Straw Hat Boy just keeps smiling and doesn't respond. Law shrugs and decides to let him do what he wants. They finally reach the square, needing only to go up to face the clown. Luffy jumps, Law and Nami widen their eyes, being taken by surprise with the sudden action. Bonnie and Zoro on the other hand were already expecting this kind of thing from him. Where's Buggy? Dark smoke starts to come out of his right arm, and moving this arm forward, he punches the base with a column of darkness, breaking everything and sending several people flying. Damn, is this guy an idiot? Law asks still with widened eyes. Nami had already disappeared from their gaze, Zoro and Bonnie were already following their crewmate. Law can only sigh and hope for the best as he climbs into the square. In the clown pirate camp, dust was everywhere. Some were down and passed out while some of the luckier ones had only a few scratches. Cough cough, who the fuck pulled this shit? Says with a vein throbbing in his forehead in irritation. He was blue-haired man, big and a little muscular but still thin. He wore makeup on his face with crossbones running through his eyes and forming an X above his lashes, two blue lines going up. He wore a pirate hat with the same symbol as the flags they had in the harbor. He also had red lipstick wrapped around the sides, a colorful coat that looked more fitting for a party. He also wore a white shirt with red stripes, a purple scarf, a dark green scarf covering a lighter green waist in his pants, and gloves covering his hands. This was the famous Captain Buggy. He looked from side to side. He just remembers hearing someone screaming for him and suddenly a big impact happened. Is it the Navy? The dust descends and the clown sees four people and an animal. And one of them had a straw hat, irritatingly like that of a certain redhead. Arg. Who are you? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the future Pirate King. Law didn't seem to get tired of being surprised by Luffy, at the same time he was starting to respect him a little. The confidence he used to say this to a veteran pirate was admirable. Ha 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 ha, King of Pirates, that was a good one. Hearing this, the dark hair just snorts. The captain of the enemy pirates, however, looks to the side and notices someone interesting. Hey, if it's not Roronoa Zoro. So the famous pirate hunter is here for my head. Zoro smirks as he hears about his old nickname coming from the clown's mouths. I'm no longer a hunter, I'm a pirate and we're here as such. He speaks with his Wado Ikimonji already between his teeth and the other two swords in hand. The Buggy's subordinates who were not defeated at the time had already risen and were ready for combat. Hey, Someone is trying to break into the treasure room. One of the pirates who was sent further away thanks to Luffy's punch ended up seeing Nami. What? Shit, this was a distraction. Buggy exclaims, shifting his attention from the group, to the red-haired girl. Everyone runs in the same direction as the thief, that almost went into despairs when finds herself surrounded on all sides. However, before the pirates get any closer, a mass of darkness appears on the ground, trapping and pulling them, who in a few seconds are thrown back in a shattered state. Those who survived were showing only the white part of their eyes and with their mouths wide open trying to pronounce something incomprehensible. This mass disappears from the ground and Luffy walks until he is between the pirates and the redhead, with dark smoke coming out of his back showing his enemies who was responsible for the attack. Your fight is with me. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't look angry either, his expression was neutral. Only for all four who had contact with him before, this showed how serious he was. Onigiri. With both swords in front of his chest forming an X and swiping at the clown pirates who were surrounding the redhead, at high speed he swings his swords making the cut and killing several of the pirate clown's minions in the process. In some it opens the stomach, in others the neck, in any case it gets blood all over again. Bonnie also advances fooling several of the clowns making some children and others old. She killed them by breaking their necks or using the barrel of her long boot or using her own fists. Usi jumped on enemies, already using his claws to cut the throat of one and his powerful bite to take the entire piece of abdomen from another. I have no idea what Luffy's fruit is, despite looking extremely powerful. Bonnie's is definitely a paramecia. The tattooed one stared at the dark-haired and the pink-et thoughtfully. An enemy pirate tries to sneak up behind his back and does a cut with his sword, but when he goes to make the attack Law just takes a step to the side, avoiding it. He takes his sword from its scabbard and cuts off the enemy's head. With a slightly expression of amusement Law raises his right hand to his chest. Room. A light blue circle forms in the palm of his hand and grows until it forms a sphere covering a few meters around it. His allies eyed the technique with interest. The clown pirates inside the circle looked around curiously. Using his sword Law makes what looks like a circular cut in the air and everyone inside the circle has their bodies separated, somehow. In some their legs were separated from their top, in others the cut was on the torso and there were even some that the cut was in their necks. This was just a head screaming and floating as he watched his disorienting body pacing back and forth. Captain, help. This one had only been divided in two, the upper and lower parts. That is, his legs were running from one side to the other while from the waist up he used his arms to support himself on the floor. What made the experience even more frightening was that in addition to being fully aware, they felt no pain and were still able to see their internal organs through the holes where they had been separated. Even some organs were split, but still pulsing and alive, with a red that made everything look normal. Several clowns started vomiting. Nami, even knowing that this probably wouldn't happen to her, almost vomited too. Seemingly amused by the situation, Law began to move his hands in circles and all victims of his powers began to move, floating circularly around the surgeon, so he turns his hand palm up with his index and fingers, half pointing up and the others closed in hand. Random parts of the enemy's bodies join together, the leg of one for example joins the arms of another and even the head of a third. This kind of bizarre combination happens all over the sphere, while the clowns run around looking for their body parts. At this point outside the sphere no one else is fighting, they are just watching Law's abilities in awe. Still looking amused by the situation, Law undoes the room. Instantly several of the people who have suffered the effects of his powers fall to the ground screaming in pain, blood begins to ooze from unnatural joints, like an arm in place of a hip. One after the other they begin to fall in hellish pain and feeling more scared than they would ever have been in their lives if they had never met the surgeon. Fortunately for them this suffering was short-lived and within moments they were dead. Silence took over the square. Buggy lost any confidence in a match against these four. The famous pirate hunter and 3 devil fruit users. He wasn't suicidal. but he also doesn't usually run away empty-handed. Hey. Wait a second. That's not fair. Fair? There are many of you and few of us, does that seem fair to you? Zoro says with a sarcastic smirk. He was all covered in blood, putting even more fear in the hearts of the surviving pirates. Buggy is cornered in a cold sweat. He had to choose his next words well. What I mean is, I'm challenging you to a duel, Roronoa Zoro. He speaks with false confidence while pointing to the green-haired swordsman. Zoro, in turn, laughs a little and moves forward, showing that he has accepted the challenge. Tisk, that's boring, I wanted to fight him. Luffy complains, pouting. Something's wrong. Law thinks to himself, but not noticing what exactly. Without anyone noticing, Buggy made a small signal to his subordinates. The swordsman and the clown are a few meters away from each other. Luffy and Law approach. Luffy to see the fight better and Law because he was suspicious. I heard you have a devil fruit ability, so you better not disappoint me. He speaks with a psychotic look that almost made the red-nosed one cry. Calm down, Buggy, calm down. Imagine the fame you'll get if you kill him. A goofy smile appears on the clown's face. Zoro steps forward and with just one cut splits Buggy in half, at least that's how it looks to the other five. Uzi grunts as he stares at what they assume is the corpse, showing extreme discomfort. Luffy and Bonnie seem disappointed with the clown's performance. The boy starts walking the other way to finish off Buggy's henchman, who seems strangely calm. Nami is relieved that it's all over, but Law feels even more that something is not fitting. That's it? Disappointing. He says, putting his swords in their scabbards. Roronoa dodge. Still with his back to Buggy's corpse, the swordsman doesn't understand their concerns. Everything happened in less than 5 seconds. Buggy's hand flew with a knife straight to Zoro's abdomen. Nami and Bonnie widen their eyes. Law himself is taken by surprise and is slow to react. Luffy doesn't hesitate and runs off to stop the attack. The swordsman wouldn't be able to dodge, and Luffy was caught off guard, not having enough concentration to use his powers. If he was prepared, he might be able to create a small black hole to draw the hand to it. Only the speed with which things happened and the surprise factor negated that option. He wasn't going to be able to touch the hand to stop it, so there was only one way to help his crewmate. Zoro looks back expecting an attack, but when he sees what happened, his pupils are the size of needles. In front of him, Luffy, who he's only known for a short time despite being crewmates, the silly Straw Hat Boy, had his hand pierced by a knife that should have hit him. Luffy! Bonnie screams with widened eyes. This guy! Sweat runs through Law's forehead as he is completely taken by surprise by Luffy's action. Nami covered her mouth with her hand while the shock was clear in her eyes. A pirate sacrificing himself for his comrades. It went against everything she had ever seen before. Uzi looked desperate, wanted to run to his owner's side. At the same time, he knew that was not what the pirate would want. Luffy! Regret took the swordsman. Of course he knew Luffy for a little amount of time, but even so, not only were they companions, he was willing to take a blow like that so he wouldn't get hurt. He clenched his sword hilts in frustration. He was weak, very weak. From that moment on, he decided two things. Luffy is the person he must follow to the end, and he would never again be so weak as to need him, his captain, to sacrifice himself for him. The blade came out of the back of his hand and blood was running down his arm. Luffy just gritted his teeth and closed his fingers around the clown's hand. At the same time, Buggy was attracted to that part of his body magnetically. He was flying, his hand joined the fist, and for the first time since he ate that fruit, he couldn't separate himself. Zoro, Bonnie. Hearing her name, the Pinkette got out of shock and faced her friend, her crewmate, with great concern. Zoro looked at him with regret. He was still blaming himself. But what nobody expected was that the boy looked at them smiling. This only left the five even more surprised than they already were. One of the properties I didn't tell you about is that Buggy was squirming trying to get out of the boy's hands, but not only did his powers not work, he also didn't seem to be strong enough to compete with what was just a stupid child for him. It's that when I touch a devil fruit user, they can lose their powers. They take a while to process this information. At first they don't understand what their friend told them, but when their minds finally interpret right what they were told, the shock almost makes their brains stop again. The clown was even close to crying when he heard this. The Straw Hat Boy then proceeds to look at the enemy in his hands. In contrast to the smiling face he showed the others, this time he was serious with a cold look on the clown. He pulls the steel pipe from his back with his other hand and with great force and speed hits the clown on the head. The Bara no Mi user thinks that his skull is going to break and is overcome with fear. Shoot! His subordinates are taken by surprise and are at a loss for what to do. But Captain Dash. Luffy hits the enemy even harder, blood starts flowing from his head, he broke something in his head. Shoot! They hear the roar of fire igniting and a cannon aimed at them, even Luffy stopped his attacks. The cannon fuse is about to run out, so Law takes the initiative. Room. Shambles. A light blue sphere shrouds all allies and teleports them out of the square. Buggy is released thanks to this and disbands in time to escape the shot. A loud bang is heard even from outside the city, scaring the residents who were far away. In front of the square where there were several houses, there was now just a trail of destruction. What do you think you're doing? They must be close shoot to every side. Meanwhile the six ran away from the square. Luffy was running ahead until he tripped and fell. Luffy. She was still shocked at the direction things had taken, it was a lot to process in a short time. You don't need to worry Bonnie, I'm. His speech is interrupted when he feels a bite on his shin. Looking down he sees a small white dog biting him furiously. Bonnie glares at the dog with hate and Osi prepares to advance on the canine that is 1/10 his size. Grr! You stupid dog! Don't you dare! She lifts her leg ready to kick the dog. Stop! You won't hurt him. An old man with armor on his chest, shoulders, and legs, and with a spear on his back appeared. Despite his outfit he didn't resemble a warrior at all. Bonnie ignored him and was about to kick the dog that Osi would love to rip apart later. Jojo, come here. Before the pink-haired pirate's blow was given, the puppy responded to the call by releasing Luffy's leg, which was punctured and bleeding despite the fact that he didn't seem to care, and went to the old man. The man then starts stroking the dog's head with a sad look. He dash. Law puts his arm in front of her, preventing her from advancing towards those two. It doesn't matter now. Hey old man, do you have any medical supplies there? Hearing this, everyone realizes that it needed to be dealt with soon. Bonnie and Zoro look at the ground in frustration and Osi lowers his head whimpering. The old man stares at the group he thinks is at least strange. He nods his head. There must be some in the store. He points to the building behind them. It had a large pet shop sign and unlike the other houses it still seemed to be cleaned regularly. Why do you need it? I think it's for this. Luffy raises his stabbed hand, some of the blood had already dried around his wrists but it still came out a lot, and his own hand was very pale, even so Luffy only pointed to the wound with a neutral expression. Nami felt a shiver seeing that cut and took a deep breath, afraid and difficult to say what it feels like seeing a pirate she hates so much hurting himself like that to save a crewmate. She would be even more stunned if she knew how little they had known each other. The old man in the armor took a few steps back with a frightened until he recovered from the shock. I have some stuff in the store. We need to deal with this soon. The surgeon nods and everyone enters the shop. Boss, the cannon is ready. Do we shoot? He answers, there were some bands wrapped around the top of his head. Wait. Not yet. If we destroy those idiots, the map goes with it? Do you know how much that map values? Besides, if I get Rorono's head, it would do a lot for my reputation. He looks like an idiot as he thinks of a future that will never materialize. So we should go after them, Captain. A skinny man on top of a pale lion with a gray mane asked. He wore blue pants, a yellow scarf around his waist. On his upper body only his chest was covered by what looked like a coat, but it was his body hair. His hair was white and joined with a beard, but made him look like he wore a weird hat, as his face itself had no hair at all. It didn't help that the top of his head had something that resembled ears. Beside him was a man riding a unicycle. He was tall and thin with some muscle. He wasn't wearing a shirt, but he wore a purple coat that reached his legs and had no sleeves. Around his neck he had a scarf with blue and white squares that went down to his leg like his coat. He wore white pants and a sky blue scarf on his stomach. One of his eyes was covered by his green hair. Oh, Moji, Kabeji, great. Our search for the thief was useless since she returned. Okay, get some men and go after the kids who attacked our base. Avoid fighting directly, they have 3 devil fruit users. Just retrieve the map and, if possible, bring Rorano here. If not possible, a creepy smile forms in his face, just come back and we'll destroy the city. The 2 nod their heads. The lion licks the ground where some of Luffy's blood has fallen and they start following the animal's nose. Did you guys try to face Buggy? The old man asked in disbelief. They were in the store's attic where they had both medical supplies, food, and water. Plus a mattress on the floor, giving a sense that the man in the armor had been there for some time. Sure, Shishishi, he looked pretty weak. But we got careless. The old man looks at the boy's hand being bandaged. Law used his powers and the first aid equipment he had, reconnecting the veins and nerves with the room, abusing a bit of his powers in the treatment. The dark-haired was just having a bit of trouble closing his hand, but the doctor said he would get better soon. However, a scar would always be there, both on the palm and on the back of the hand. Luffy didn't seem to mind, however the swordsman couldn't stop blaming himself. His leg was also already bandaged in the part where the dog had bitten him. They had already disinfected it and would be fine soon. The pirate's pet stood beside him and licked his other hand a little. Luffy smiled at him and patted his head. Bonnie looked down as much as the other 2. Law was incredulous at the same time that he started to respect the Straw Hat Pirate a lot more. Being part of his crew seemed reasonable now. Nami was still trying to process the contrast between them and normal pirates she had already seen. But tell me, Asen, why are you here when everyone else is gone? This was something everyone was curious about and brought them out of their downcast and pensative states. In answer to the question he sighed and began to remember the past. This pet shop belonged to an old friend of mine. He was the owner of Jojo, the dog outside. Having a pet shop was something he always wanted to do, and when he did it was the happiest day of his life. He and Jojo loved this place very much, always taking care of it with great affection. But one day my friend found out he had cancer and it was already at a very high stage. He promised Jojo that he would come back when he was hospitalized, only that, he died a few days later. Bonnie and Usi were shaken hearing the story of the little animal that they almost killed. They felt remorse in their chests as both looked down in shame. Jojo made a promise that he would continue to take care of this place, and he has been doing that ever since. The townspeople think he's waiting for the owner to come back, but I know he knows, and yet he's trying to keep his promise. This place is a treasure for him. Treasure. One of his hands unconsciously goes to the straw hat on his head with the memories of Shanks, while the other touches the steel pipe in his back, reminding him of his brothers, of them hunting, running, and fighting using those pipes as weapons. These memories bring him happiness. The old man looks around the store's attic with mementos of his friend. And, are you here taking care of him? The pink-ed question, once again looking down feeling guilty. Usi covered his face with his paws in shame. Of course, I can't let the pirates hurt him. The lull of the moment is broken when they hear a loud crashing noise below them. The eldest screams for the dog and desperately descends the stairs, followed by the pirates and the thief. The store that a few moments ago was clean and well taken care of, was now broken and with products everywhere. The little dog was leaning against an wall, injured, trying in vain to get up. Shitty dog. The lion tamer talked while his animal ate the store's rations. Jojo. When descending the stairs and facing this scene, the old man loses his mind and tries to attack the lion. He pulls the spear from his back and runs forward. Moji and Kabeji smile, imagining the man's head flying. The lion, Richie, raises his paw and quickly lowers it on the old man. If he was hit, at least he would break a lot of bones, and if he was lucky he would be killed. None of these scenarios came to fruition, however, all thanks to a boy with a straw hat who, faster than any, pulled a steel pipe using his good hand and slapped the pale lion in the face, making him and his tamer fly to outside the store. The old man, Nami, and Kabeji are incredulous with the boy's physical strength. "Hey Luffy. Don't exaggerate, you're still hurt." The tattooed one speaks with real concern. His medical side appearing too much. "Oh, my bad." He speaks looking at the doctor while scratching his head. The redhead looks around, getting more and more irritated, especially seeing the state of poor Jojo. "This is what pirates are," she whispers, biting her lower lips. "Tisk, leave that for another time," the pink-et says, while looking to newcomers' enemies. Nami gets even more irritated and tries to respond Bonnie, until she sees the tamer getting up in the street. "Oh you." Moji struggles up from the ground. He landed on an arm, nearly breaking him. Richie stood up too, only in fear instead of anger. "Look on the bright side, Moji. Our targets are all here." He speaks with a psychotic smile. However, they can only see on half of his face as the other half is covered with green hair. "Hadn't the captain told us to not face them directly? It's simple, we keep them busy, kill whoever has the map." He stares at Nami, who walks back scared, "while they're busy, right men?" "Yes." There were about 30 armed pirates across the street ready to fire. "Looks like these guys don't learn." Luffy was about to step forward to start the fight when Bonnie grabbed him by the arm. "Wait Luffy. This time you won't have to fight." With the request made by Bonnie, Luffy looks at her in confusion. "Please, Captain." He opened his eyes a little. Seeing how determined she was, he just sighed and walked back. She and Usi walked side by side. Zoro followed them with his swords already sheathed and a smile on his face. He was going to take away all the frustration growing inside him now. Law was not far behind either. The four left the store facing more than 30 enemies. Their captain sat cross-legged and watched it all intently. The old man was stunned by everything happening, and Nami had more and more complicated feelings about these pirates she had met. As far as she knew, they could have left the whole fight to the Straw Hat. She saw that with his powers he would take it for granted. At the same time, she saw how they were in regards to the wound he had and knew that they wanted to fight because of that. Even Law, who wasn't even officially part of the crew, was still going ahead. She still hadn't realized that she increasingly considered them amazing people. Luffy noticed too, that's why he heard Bonnie request so quickly. Now he was officially the captain and had to pay attention to his crew members. It was one of the things he learned from Shanks, one of the most important things. Bonnie and Usi came face to face with Moji and Richie. In addition to wanting to fight alone this time, they also wanted to hit the people who destroyed Jojo's treasure, a lot. They thought they owed it to the puppy. "Ha! What are a little girl and a kitten going to do to us?" He says this looking at Bonnie's body, imagining her being devoured by his lion, maybe after he had fun with her. Obviously the look in his eyes pissed her off more than she'd been all day. "Usi, I end up with one shitty animal and you end up with the other." The tiger nods his head in understanding. The tamer, on the other hand, frowns angrily. "Men, finish her." The subordinates pointed their guns to the woman and the tiger, both remaining immobile. Nami almost yells for them to get out of there. Of course that wouldn't be necessary, because before they had a chance to shoot 15 were on the ground with gigantic cuts on various parts of their bodies, and the other 15 had their bodies dismembered and were still alive. The old man and the other 2 buggy subordinates were stunned by the group's performance, while they themselves didn't think it was too much. Luffy smiled, almost bouncing seeing his crew shine. Zoro yawned in boredom as they once again tried to stab him in the back. Unlike before, however, he turned quickly and redirected the dagger he had stuck in a wall. Very good, Roronoa. The acrobat speaks by juggling his daggers. Zoro looks at him blankly. Did you learn how to be a coward, with that asshole of your captain? Maybe. He answers with a macabre smile. Back to Bonnie and Usi, Moji looked a lot less confident now that all the underlings had either been killed or torn apart, who would also die soon too, not that he knew. And that didn't escape Bonnie's eyes. The crew looks as shitty as that son of a bitch clown. The tamer grits his teeth. Shut up. I won't lose to a woman. Bonnie mouths turns into an O in amusement. I won't lose to a guy in such a ridiculous outfit. He clenches his fists and looks at the enemy pirate furious. Listen here, bitch. This is my masculine hair. He proudly declares. In response, everyone but Kabeji makes a disgusted face. Oh god damn it. Zoro wants to change. No fucking way. Ew, how disgusting. It was a little ironic that coming from him, considering how long he hadn't showered and all the dried blood on his body that was already a stain on his white shirt. A vein in the clown pirate tamer's forehead appearing, looking like it's going to explode. Listen here, your bunch of so dash. Wanting to get this over with as soon as possible and not wanting to touch him more than necessary, Bonnie punches him in the middle of the face, both breaking his nose and turning him into a kid. From his point of view, everything went dark for a second. He felt his body lighter and being thrown farther than he thought he should. Hitting the wall with everything, Moji spits out some blood and hits the ground face down. Standing up with difficulty, he notices that his hands look smaller. He puts his hand to his face and notices blood coming out of his nose, which makes him look down to see his hands and see how close he is to the ground, at the same time noticing how his body looks a lot smaller. Moji. This is the one that changes the age of others. First, the tamer doesn't understand why his crewmate was repeating what their captain had said until he put 2 and 2 together and realized his situation. He had been reduced to a third of his size, his pants didn't fit him, his face was rounder and all the body hair was gone. He felt a breeze all over his body. Moji looks scared to the pinkette, who has a huge smile on her face and with her arms crossed below her breasts. Feeling pure terror, the white-haired one tries to run away, which results in a kick in the face given by Bonnie. That was for the store. She kicks again. Her high boots make the kicks hurt even more. This one for Jojo. Richie tries to attack her, but Usi jumps on him and makes a nice rip in the lion's side with his claws. And that's for what your captain did to mine. With her face twisted with hatred, Bonnie kicks him in the neck using the barrel of her boot, making a hole that killed him instantly. The old man was a little startled by how coldly she seemed to have killed that child, even though he knew it wasn't a child. The feeling of revenge, however, made him grateful for her. Shishishi, see Jojo, my friend avenged you. Luffy says to the dog with a big and proud smile in his face. Ah. The puppy looked a little better. Richie begins to cry the death of his owner, and in his hatred he tries to jump into Bonnie, being stopped by the tiger that uses its paws to break the lion's right front paw. Having lost mobility, he was an easy prey for the tiger, who had gotten used to living with Luffy. With his mouth alone he rips a good part of the animal's back that cries, feeling even more pain. But Usi is so furious for what they did to both his owner and friend and also to the puppy. With his paws he rips all over the lion's back, and just like his owner did, he tried to run away, and just like Bonnie did, Usi stopped him. The tiger bit into Richie's tail, almost tearing it off, then he pulls him back, making him fall to the ground at his mercy. Seeing how much the lion has already suffered, the other feline decides he has no point in continuing this anymore and uses his claws to slit his throat. Kabeji was pale, realizing how much they had underestimated their enemies. Probably just because of meeting them today, their strength had already been reduced by more than half. The acrobat turns and tries to run away, but Zoro cuts his unicycle in half, causing him to hit the ground face down. Thinking about running away, he speaks with his sword pointed at the emo acrobat. "Damn Rorano. Don't underestimate me." He pulls out his daggers. "I'm not underestimating you, I know exactly how weak you are." Gritting his teeth and with visible veins of hatred on his forehead, he runs to face the green-haired. Zoro in response placed the two swords in parallel, and with their blades behind the white-handled sword in his mouth, he advances forward faster than the acrobat. Toragari. He pulls both swords forward, making two vertical cuts. The two pass by each other. At first it seems like nothing happened, but in the next moment two cuts open on Kabeji's shoulders going to his waist. An immeasurable amount of blood came out of him, causing him to drop dead. The last thing he thought he saw was a tiger above Rorano. That's what happens to anyone who gets into our way. Luffy was smiling, so happy with the result, even if it was no surprise to him. Nami was shocked at how strong this group was. She didn't knew that they were this brutal. The old man, however, looked thrilled. He was shaking all over with his eyes watering. "That's it. I cannot take it anymore." Everyone looks at him confused. "I'm the mayor of this town. 40 years ago this was nothing, we built everything ourselves. And these clowns now want to take that away from us? I hid like a rat for far too long while you who have nothing to do with it are taking them out one after the other, but I, who love this town so much, ain't doing a damn thing." By this point the mayor was crying. The pirates looked at him blankly while Nami almost cried with him. Unfortunately the moment is interrupted by a huge explosion. Another part of the city had been destroyed by the buggy bomb. "Enough. I won't allow this anymore." He gets up to run, but a strong hand lands on his shoulder, keeping him in place. He looks up and sees the boy in the straw hat. "Boy, don't stop me. This is my fight, I will protect my treasure." The old man can't see Luffy's gaze, which is covered by a shadow from his hat. "Sorry Asen, but you're wrong. This is a fight between pirates." After saying this, he hits the mayor's head in the back, knocking him out. "What are you doing?" Nami screams with her widened. Luffy looks at her as if nothing has happened. "Sorry, I'm not in the mood to let him die." "But dash. Forget it, he was just going to get in the way." "Of course, we pretend to do a favor in exchange for that, right, Captain?" Bonnie says with a convinced smile. Luffy also smiles and leaves the store. "This time the nose guy is mine." They nod their heads. The dark-haired goes to where Kabeji's dagger had been stuck in the wall. He takes it out and puts it on his waist, then he turns to Redhead. "Nami, if you want to take their treasures, this is going to be the best chance." He says nothing more, and with his crew they head towards the clown base. The thief takes a while to decide, but in the end she goes after them. In the center a boy in a straw hat, on his right a girl with short clothes and pink hair, beside her a blood-stained tiger, with the blood still dripping from his mouth. On the left a swordsman bathed in enemy blood and with 3 swords at his waist, and finally beside him a thin man with tattoos down his arm, a long sword at his waist and a look that knows no hesitation. This was the group that in few hours would shock the East Blue. Once again that day they are facing each other at the entrance to the buggy base. The difference is that now they have a cannon pointed at them. On top of the barrel of the cannon the clown captain looks at them fearlessly. "So you guys really approached, huh? I can even admit that you guys are good at fighting, but there are things that just go beyond human limits. Feel the buggy ball." To some of Buggy's annoyance, only Nami, who is a little behind the main group, seems to get scared when the cannon is aimed at them. "Back off," he whispers, and only his crewmates hear, making them jump a few meters away from him. getting closer to the thief. What was it? Your little friends abandoned you? Ha ha ha, shoot. Luffy ignores the useless teasing and just raises his left hand. Below him a black hole in the shape of a circle with a short diameter forms, and in his own hand one also forms. The bullet is fired, but to the surprise of the blue-haired clown it deviates a little off course and goes straight into the mass of darkness in the boy's hand. Buggy at first doesn't react until his mind processes what just happened, and he's staring at Luffy with his mouth open, eyes wide and phlegm coming out of his nose in pure fear. Looking directly into the clown's eyes, Luffy gives a sneer and jumps to the same height as him. The black hole that was on the ground disappears while the one that was in Luffy's hand continues. Release. The cannonball went flying back as fast as it was sent. The makeup pirate's eyes almost popped out of fright. Only using his powers he managed to go sideways, separating the rest of his body from his feet and flying to the side. The rest of the crew aren't that lucky. The buggy ball destroys the entire square with the bases and subordinates. Some are reduced to almost nothing with only their bones shattered and their blood left. Others, only parts of the body remain, such as arms or a leg, a trunk, or even a head almost shattered. There were practically no survivors, or they were reduced to nothing, or only body parts were left. Buggy looked at it with a despair that took root in the depths of his soul. Not because his men had died, but because in a few hours the forces of his crew, that was considered one of the strongest in the East Blue, had been reduced to nothing. To say he was having a panic attack would be an understatement. He was almost going insane. It's over, Buggy, you lost. Luffy was now in the rest of what was left of the square, facing the clown that was in the air. This one was looking at the boy, more specifically his straw hat, going crazy. Damn, why is it always one of you? He talks as he rubs his hand over his face, ruining the makeup and making him look even more insane. Why is it always a straw hat son of a bitch who takes everything from me when I am so close? You're like that asshole of that redhead. This catches Luffy's interest. Redhead, with a straw hat, are you talking about Shanks? Hearing that name, first Buggy stops until he clenches his teeth and fists with the veins in his head looking like they're going to explode. You know him, of course you know him. Then a look of understanding passes over Buggy before he reverts to his smoldering hatred. Don't tell me that hat. Huh? It's his, so what? How the fuck does someone like you know him? The clown loses any sign of sanity he might have had. How? We were of the same crew. And one day after a battle against an enemy crew I found a fucking treasure map that would make me rich. As if it was not enough, we also found a fucking devil fruit. I thought someone would have to be stupid to want to lose the ability to swim and never find treasures in the deep of the sea, but do you even know the price of one? I would be rich for the rest of my life. I had even fooled everyone into thinking that I ate a false devil fruit. I would get rich with that map and the fruit. But then that shitty redhead greatened me. I hid the fruit in my mouth, only that when he gave me another scare I ate it and still dropped the map. And I still fell into the sea. If that shitty had not taken me from there I would have died. Hearing this, everyone looked at him like they were looking at an idiot. And in fact, they were looking at an idiot. So not only were you dumb enough to hide a fruit in your mouth, Shanks also saved your life and you still complain. You really are a son of a bitch. Someone like you would never understand. He dives towards Luffy. Bonnie makes a move in their direction, but Zoro puts his arm in front of her. They exchange looks, she nods and takes a step back. Everyone, including Nami, begins to watch the fight. You should have understood by now that you don't have a chance against me. He bends down, dodging the attack, and punches the clown in the stomach. His feet that were apart come back to his body at the same moment. The punch takes all the air out of the clown and knocks him to the ground, but as he falls he pulls 3 knives from his back and tries to cut Luffy in the head, or at least that's what the Straw Hat thought. He ducks his head to dodge, but when he hears the sound of something tearing, his expression changes. He puts his foot on Buggy's chest with pressure and grabs his hat on his head and takes a good look. 3 vertical cuts that go from the base to the middle of the hat could be seen, and although it could still be sewn, that wasn't what mattered to Luffy right now. Uzi whimpers seeing what happened. Bonnie gets even more worried, and even Zoro can't keep himself expressionless. Luffy slowly puts the hat on his head. He kicks the clown in the side, making him roll a little to the side. Buggy gets up pissed off. Luffy only raises his left hand, the one that wasn't stabbed, and the clown is pulled by a gravitational pull towards the hand, being held by the neck. With the other hand that can now close it completely, Luffy takes the steel pipe. With force and speed he hits the side of the head of the former enemy captain, who in response only grunts in pain. That was for the town. He raises the pipe above his head and goes down, hitting the same spot he had hit before in the other fight, and this time with more force. The wounds that had been bandaged open again, and if someone took an X-ray they would see a crack in the clown's skull. That was for the mayor. Below them a small black hole is formed. Luffy releases Buggy, which is pulled inside it. The dark-haired counts for a few seconds before releasing the enemy and undoing the black hole afterwards. He once again catches him by the neck. Blood runs from his nostrils, eyes, and ears. The fingers of his hands are bent in unnatural directions, and it was even possible to see the bones sticking out of the skin. Abrasions and bruises were all over the body. His head was tilted back while it could only be seen the whites of his eyes. P please, SSTST stop. Luffy remains expressionless. That was for my hat. And this. He tucks the pipe into his back and takes the dagger from his waistband. It's for Zoro. Luffy stabs the clown in the same position that Buggy planned to stab the swordsman. He doesn't even have the strength to say anything. Luffy pulls the dagger back and throws it to the ground. Now die. He throws it in the air, makes a pose to punch with his left arm a little behind with dark smoke coming out of him. Then with the clown falling he takes his arm forward and a column of black smoke hits him, sending him to a lot far. The six see his silhouette moving away on the horizon. Luffy once again takes the hat off his head and looks at it. This time the regretful look is obvious. Bonnie and the others arrive at his side and look at his sad face. Hey, she speaks, putting her hand on his shoulder, you was amazing, Captain. A small smile appears on his face. The weight of what Pink Ed saying that was something he was fully aware of. Nami watches the group moment with discomfort, feeling out of place. She shakes her head from side to side and tries to focus. Walking towards the treasure store, which was relieved to see was intact after Luffy's attack, she takes everything Buggy had gathered so far. 10,000 berries came that way. A genuine smile that hadn't appeared on her face in a long time could be seen now it was almost ending. She faces the victorious pirates with a series of mixed feelings. Hey, says after getting close to them, if you want I'll sew this for you. This obviously referred to the straw hat. Luffy's face lit up with such genuine happiness that it almost moved the girl. Really? Thank you so much, Shishishi. She takes one of the bags of gold that contains half of the stolen wealth and hands it to him. What is this? The others also don't understand. What is this? This is gold and it's too heavy, so carry it for me. She speaks, throwing the bag at him. Okay. She walks past them all and then looks back and sees their faces without understanding anything. What are you doing? Let's go. Shall we? The doubt on his face turns to happiness. So you agreed to join my crew? The thief is slightly irritated to hear this. Listen here, I'll never be a pirate. That said, I don't see any harm in allying with you guys a little longer. Bonnie clicks her tongue, stressed with Nami. Pussy does the same and Zoro doesn't seem to care. Luffy is just smiling. Got it? And you Tral? The surgeon is taken back by the new nickname. For a second it's like he's thinking about several things. If you let me, I want to join your crew. Luffy jumps with happiness and puts his arm around the neck of the tattooed man, who looks a bit annoyed by it but decides to put up with it. Shishishi, that's it guys. We have more members now, let's go to the Grand Line. Do we even have a boat for that? Zoro asks with a raised eyebrow. We can think about the details later. Bonnie speaks with the same happiness as her captain. They head towards the harbor where the boats are. Halfway there, Luffy seems to remember something. You can go ahead, I have a little thing to do. Before hearing their responses, he was already gone. Not far from there, the boy in the straw hat ran until he reached a familiar place. The old man was still unconscious, Jojo was beside him licking the mayor's hair. Luffy with a sweet smile puts in some kibble from a package that was lying on the ground for the dog. Well, he leaves the bag of gold on the ground, consider it my apologize for hitting you, Asen. Luffy looks around the street, not paying attention to the bodies of the enemies but to the houses and buildings around them. And also, take good care of your treasure, you too. He looks the puppy in the eye as he says this. Ah. Hi, I know. Where's that idiot? Nami says, already impatient to go. Hey. Look how you talk about our captain. The Pink Ed had gained real respect for Luffy now, she and the swordsman, but this one was already dozing off and probably wouldn't mind someone just calling him an idiot. Bonnie on the other hand had seen many types of people, the worst several times, but never someone like Luffy. She was sure she wouldn't regret choosing him as her captain. So she wouldn't accept a thief who wasn't part of the crew and who didn't even seem able to recognize his value to insulting him. I talk what I want about an idiot like him. She answers showing her tongue to Bonnie. Oh you. They are forward to forward pushing each other almost out of balance. Hi. Let's go. Soon Luffy appeared jumping straight to the fishing boat where Zoro and Law were. His landing almost made the boat turn, almost knocked Law down and made Zoro wake up with a start. The fuck was that? Law holds onto the side of the boat tightly as he snorts irritably. Shish, my bad. The girls were in a fourth smaller fishing boat that was the buggies before. It was tied to the other's fishing boat and the boat with the resources was tied to this one now. They untie the boat from the mast that held them and continue their journey. They had already taken a considerable distance for the island to be almost disappearing from the horizon when Nami missed something. Wait a minute, she looks at Luffy, where's the treasure I gave you? Ah, I left it with the old man, he'll need to take care of his town. He speaks lying on the side of the boat with a calm look. It was my treasure. She speaks standing up gesturing furiously. Oh, stop crying. Bonnie says dismissing her. Nami sits down, sighs and hugs her knee, hiding her face. Bonnie looks at her with contempt, what she didn't know is that the redhead had a smile on her face. Maybe she had admired the Straw Hat's attitude, maybe.